今天是圣诞节。
Today is Christmas.
之前我们唱了许多的诗歌，我们不断的强调一个特别的字眼，
We sang a couple of hymns, and there's a word that we kept emphasizing.
就是荣耀，荣耀，荣耀。
And that is glory, glory, glory.
就是当耶稣来到这世上的时候，
And that is when Jesus came to the world.
天使在地面颂扬说荣耀，荣耀，荣耀。
Angels were all proclaiming glory, glory, glory.
那耶稣到底他来的这个荣耀是怎么样的一个荣耀呢？
Then what is this glory that they were proclaiming about of Jesus coming?
是从哪一个角度认为耶稣来是一个荣耀呢？
And from what angle does the glory come from?
在约翰福音第1章第14节这边讲到，
In book of John, chapter 1, verse 14, it says this.
他说道成了肉身，住在我们中间，充充满满的有恩典有真理。
And it says, and the word became flesh and lived amongst us, and we have seen his glory, the glory as of the Father's only Son.
然后作者约翰继续写道，我们也见过他的荣光，正是父独生子的荣光。
And the author continues, the Father's only Son, the glory as of a Father's only Son, full of grace and full of truth.
在中文圣经里面翻译的荣光就是荣耀，就是约翰说我们这群门徒也看过这个荣耀哦，就是父独生子的荣耀。
In the Chinese translation, the glory, it translates into glory directly, and it says this glory is of the Son, and we've all witnessed it before.
但是荣耀是一个非常抽象的字眼，
But the word glory is very abstract.
到底是什么意思呢？为什么约翰说我们见过耶稣的荣耀哦？
What does it really mean, and why does the author say we have seen this glory?
让我们来到今天的经文，就是约翰福音第12章。
Let's turn to the scripture that we'll be going through, which is John chapter 12.
这边讲到上去过节做礼拜的人中，有一些人是希腊人。
We hear mentioned there were some Greeks among those who went up to worship at the festival.
这一群希腊人，当他们来到耶路撒冷过节的时候，
And this group of Greeks, when they came to Jerusalem for the festival,
他们特别跑到耶稣的门徒那里。
they deliberately went to Jesus' disciples.
这个门徒叫腓利，他们去找腓利说：“先生啊，我们想看看耶稣。”
And they directly went to Philip and had the request, we would like to see Jesus.
腓利也很有意思，
And Philip is actually a very interesting character
他
himself.
也没有直接去找耶稣，
He didn't directly go to Jesus himself.
他找了另一个门徒叫安德烈。
He went to another disciple named Andrew.
他说：“安德烈啊，有人要来找耶稣。”
He says, hey, Andrew, there's some person that wants to see Jesus.
所以这两个门徒安德烈跟腓利，他们后来一起去找耶稣。
And then Philip and Andrew, they went to find Jesus together.
然后耶稣讲了一句非常奇怪的话，
And therefore Jesus said a very interesting, a very weird phrase.
耶稣跟他们说：“人只要得荣耀的时候到。”
And Jesus says, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified.
这个讲述就回应了约翰在写约翰福音的时候说，他们也见过耶稣的荣光。
This reflects back to John chapter 1, where the author mentioned that we've seen glory.
当耶稣讲完一段话以后，
After Jesus said another phrase, a couple of sentences,
在中文的圣经是第37节，在英文的圣经是第36节。
in the Chinese translation is in verse 37, in English is 36.
就是耶稣说完这句话之后，就离开他们，隐藏起来了。
That is, after Jesus said this, he went and hid himself.
这个很奇怪啊！大家想想整个故事的描述，
It's actually very weird and very interesting if we look at the description.
就是有一群希腊人来找耶稣，
That is, there's a group of Greeks that came to look for Jesus.
然后门徒跟耶稣讲，
And then the disciples went to tell Jesus.
然后耶稣讲了一段话。
And then Jesus said a phrase.
我们在思想，那耶稣这段话是跟谁讲？
then we have to think about who Jesus spoke those words to.
然后到最后说耶稣就隐藏起来了。
And then later says Jesus hid himself.
我们不得不问一件事，那结果耶稣到底见到这群希腊人没有？
We might ask, well, did Jesus really see the group of Greeks or no?
如果根本没有见到这群希腊人，
If Jesus did not see the group of Greeks,
为什么约翰要记这件事呢？
then why did John record this incident?
并且要指出这一些要来见耶稣的人是希腊人，
And why did he specifically say that these were Greeks who went to see Jesus?
他可以说有人要来见耶稣就可以了，
He can simply say a group of people came to see Jesus.
或者
wanted
说
to see
他
Jesus.
可以说有一批外邦人要来见耶稣就可以了。
Or he can say there's a group of Gentiles wanting to come and see Jesus.
但是他这边特别用一个名词，他说有一些希腊人要来见耶稣。
Here it specifically says there's some Greeks among those who came wanting to see Jesus.
我们稍微对希腊有点了解的话，我们就知道
If we have a little bit understanding of Greeks,
希腊什么东西有名啊？
what is famous in Greek?
哲学跟数学嘛。
That is philosophy and mathematics.
就在主前400年前，
400 years before Christ,
他们已经有一个非常有名的哲学家叫苏格拉底，
they already have a famous philosopher named Socrates.
他后来自己的学生柏拉图、亚里士多德
And he also had his own students, Plato and Aristotle.
也继续在他的哲理上面继续发扬光大，
They continue to build on Socrates' teachings and philosophies.
就研发出后来希腊人所谓的哲学思想以及逻辑观念。
And they came out with the logic and also philosophy.
他们认为要找到真理的时候，
When they believe that they have to find truth,
可以用问答的方式。
they believe that they can ponder with questions.
如果一个老师当他讲出的话来中间有互相矛盾的话，
And if a teacher, when the answer they gave is contradictory,
可以借着问答的方式把一个真理把它显明出来，
they can use continuous questioning hypothesis to find the truth.
也用这样的问答方式逼着当事人把自己一些模糊不清楚的观念把它解决掉。
That also pushes the other people who have conflicting thoughts in their minds to really find the true answer.
一直到耶稣时代，希腊人仍是世界顶尖智慧的代表。
All the way until Jesus' time, they were the well-known people of wisdom.
因此，在约翰福音里面，每当用到世人或世界的这个字眼的时候，
Therefore, in the Bible, whenever they mention about people with wisdom,
有些地方是特别指希腊文化跟希腊人。
some areas in the Bible specifically mentions about the Greeks.
就在同一章的前面几节，这边记载到法利赛人彼此说，
Before chapter 20, chapter 19, is the Pharisees says to each other.
verse 19，
Verse 19, excuse me.
他说：“看哪，你们是徒劳无益，世人都随着他去了。”
It says, "You see, you can do nothing. Look, the world has gone after him."
就是这一批耶稣的敌人，这一批法利赛人，他们说：“哎呀，我们不要再徒劳无功了。你看，世人都跟随耶稣去了。”
It's the Pharisees who were enemies of Jesus. They said, "Hey, you see, you can do nothing because the world has gone after him."
这个所谓的世人，是指连世界上的希腊文化这一批哲学思想，这一些顶尖的人物，他们都去跟耶稣了。
The world here, it means everybody, including the Greeks who were considered the top under wisdom, they have gone to follow Jesus.
法利赛人一方面在这边说出这种评论，
Here the Pharisees said this phrase.
实际上听得出来，他们心底也渴望能够得到这种荣耀。
You can tell deep in their hearts, they actually want to have this type of glory themselves.
很可能耶稣的门徒也开始觉得，
Maybe at the same time, the disciples think similarly.
我的老师连希腊人都想来见他一面哦。
And that is, oh, wow, my teacher, even the Greeks want to see him.
哇，好了不起。
He is so marvelous.
那这边希腊人是指到底是指哪一类的人呢？
So here when it talks about the Greeks, what type of people are they really?
有几个可能，因为他们今天是到耶路撒冷过节的，
And here they're coming to Jerusalem for the festival.
也许是真的希腊人，但是他们后来归附了犹太教。
Maybe they're true Greeks who became a part of Judaism.
那也有可能这一批所谓的希腊人，乃是犹太家庭已经第二代、第三代、第四代已经完全融入希腊文化的这些后代，就好像我们自己 ABC 的第二代、第三代、第四代等等。
Or they're the second generation Greeks who have been living in the Judaism family, just like us American-born Chinese second generation, third
但是不
generation.
可否认的，他们深深受了希腊文化的影响。
But you can't refute the fact that they have been affected by the Greek culture.
他们的哲学思想是了不起的。
They have phenomenal Greek thinking philosophies.
他们今天要来见耶稣。
Today they want to come and see Jesus.
如果你是耶稣，你知道有人希望来见你，而且他们带有这样的一个文化背景或这种身份，你开心吗？
If you were Jesus at that time, you know this type of people, the group of people that want to see you, wouldn't you be very happy?
如果突然有学术界的这些崇高人物突然想来见你，想跟你讨论一些事情，你开心吗？
Or someone in their very high esteem in their field, and they want to come and meet you, wouldn't you feel super excited?
耶稣说：“我不需要这样的荣耀。”
Jesus' response was, I don't need this type of glory.
在约翰福音里面，许多的记载跟其他三本福音书不一样。
Book of John, the way that it records is a little bit different from other Gospels.
我们觉得好像其中的内容怎么跟其他三本书，奇怪，很多地方都没有或者有。
Or we might see there's some phrases that are not recorded in John or is recorded in John, but not in the other three Gospels.
在其他三本福音书当中，有记载一件很重要的事情，就是撒旦引诱耶稣在旷野里面要去试探他。
Because in the other books, it mentioned about Satan testing Jesus in the wilderness.
居然那么重要的事情，约翰福音居然没有。
Such important event, it wasn't recorded in the book John.
但是我们仔细观察的话，我们会发现一件事：
But if we dive deeper, we will find this answer.
约翰福音有讲耶稣受到的试探，
Actually, book of John did mention about Jesus being tested,
但是用不同的事迹来表达同样的事情。
but it used different ways of explaining the same event that has occurred.
在耶稣在旷野当中受试探的那个记载里面，
In the recording about Jesus in the wilderness being tested,
撒旦一直不断的要引诱耶稣去得到世界的称许，
Satan continuously luring Jesus to get the glory of the world
得到显目的崇高地位，
and get very high status,
并且要走捷径，不需要经过十字架。
and taking the shortcut in life instead of walking the path of cross.
但是约翰福音用一个不同的角度去描述同样的事。
Book of John used a different perspective to record the same event.
耶稣在约翰福音第5章41节说道
And that was recorded in John chapter 5, 21?
41
41, excuse me.
耶稣说：“我不受从人而来的荣耀。”
And that is, I do not accept glory from human beings.
而我们在进入约翰福音第12章的时候，
And as we enter into John chapter 12,
耶稣说：“我的得荣耀的时候到了，就是现在。”
and Jesus says, the time of my glory has come.
是怎么样一个荣耀呢？
What is this type of glory?
他这个荣耀不是要赢得人的认同或者赞赏。
This glory is not to get the praises from man.
约翰福音第8章54节，耶稣说：“ 我若荣耀自己，我的荣耀就算不得什么。
Jesus in chapter 8, verse 53, it says, "Are you greater than our father Abraham who died?"
Chapter 8, verse 54.
54, excuse me, 54. If I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, be of whom you say he is our God.
所以耶稣在这边说，荣耀我的乃是我的父，就是你们所说的你们的神。
Jesus says, "It is my Father who glorifies me, and he is the one that you say."
说得很清楚，耶稣是要来得荣耀。
Here it clearly says that Jesus will be here to obtain the glory.
但是这个荣耀不是从神而来的，从人而来的。
However, this glory does not come from man.
而耶稣也不要从人而来的这种荣耀。
And Jesus does not want the glory that comes from man.
他所专注的是从神而来的荣耀。
What he focuses on is the glory from God.
这个时候，耶稣在对安德烈和腓利讲话的时候，
Here when Jesus was talking to Philip and Andrew,
我们发现耶稣是对门徒讲的。
we understand that Jesus is actually also talking to the disciples.
他要告诉门徒一件事情。
He wants the disciples to understand this thing.
他说：“我现在要得到这个荣耀。”
And that is the glory that I'm going to obtain now.
这个过程，
This process,
我要让你们知道。
I want you to understand and
我
know.
要让你们认识我。
I want you to and know me.
同时，他也教导门徒一个属灵的原则。
And he's also teaching the disciple a spiritual answer.
那耶稣在教导什么呢？
What is Jesus trying to teach them?
他说：“一粒麦子若不落在地里死了，仍旧是一粒。”
And he says, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed.
如果死了，就结出许多的子粒。
But if it dies, it produces many seeds.
是的，耶稣要告诉门徒，
Here, yes, Jesus wants to tell his disciples,
就在此刻，我将要得到荣耀。
and that is at this very current moment, I will obtain glory.
而得到荣耀的方式，
And in order for me to obtain the glory,
是经过十字架。
I must go through the cross.
而他也要让他的门徒知道，
He also wants the disciples to understand
这个是我要教给你们的属灵功课。
that is the spiritual lesson that I want you to know.
这一件事情的目的
The purpose of this event
不是死，
is not death.
是什么？
What is it then?
是结出许多子粒来。
Actually, it is producing many seeds.
重点不是要去死，
The main point is not to just die.
而是要结出更多的果实来。
The main point is to produce many seeds.
接下来，耶稣说：“爱惜自己生命的，就要丧掉生命。”
Jesus continues to say, anyone who loves their life will lose it.
在这世上恨恶自己生命的，必会保全生命到永远。
While anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life.
我们听清楚耶稣讲的话，
We have to listen carefully to Jesus' words.
耶稣不是要我们去恨恶自己的生命，
Here, Jesus is not saying to hate your own life.
那个不是目的，
That is not the point.
那个是一个过程。
That is actually the process.
最重要的是要得到永恒的生命。
The most important point is to obtain eternal life.
因此，马太福音耶稣也讲过同样的话。
Therefore, in the same way, Jesus recorded in Matthew,
他说：“如果要救自己的生命的，必丧掉生命；
and as whoever wants to save their lives will lose it.
但是为我丧掉生命的，必得着生命。”
But whoever loses their life for me will find it.
耶稣的目的是希望我们要得着生命，
What Jesus wants us to do is to find life.
但是中间这个过程，我们必须要死。
But in order for us to find life, we have to go through death.
但是因为最后的结果，死这个过程是值得的，也是必须的。
However, the ending result of us obtaining life, the process of death, is necessary.
对耶稣来说，他是上十字架，
To Jesus himself, it was going onto the cross.
但是他教导他的门徒说：“你们要死，这是怎么死法？”
Then when Jesus teaches his disciple, you must go through death, what does that mean?
在这里讲到死，就是愿意放下自己的权益、地位、声望、面子。
And that is to let go of your pride, your glory, everything that you have,
为的是要得到那真正的生命。
in order to obtain the true, real life in the end.
我们要了解，基督徒要活出一个蒙神喜悦的生命，
We have to understand, in order for us Christians to live a glorious life,
不是凡事都要吃苦，
not to go through trial and tribulation all the time,
然后听从别人每一句话，
and also, or listen to every single person's words,
或者一辈子禁欲。
or forever abstaining,
而是有一个目的的。
yet to have an actual purpose.
我是愿意放下自己
We are really,
put down, lay down ourselves.
really to lay down themselves.
为什么？
And why?
要去建造别人，
In order to build others up,
让他人得到生命。
so that others can have and obtain a life.
请我们千万不要做没有意义的所谓的死跟受苦，
Let us not suffer or die in vain.
这个不是圣经的教导。
That is not the Bible's teaching.
在中古世纪有很多这边所谓的修道院里面的这些修士
In the Middle Age, there were all different type of people, a different type of monks.
他们认为他们吃苦越多，就越蒙神的喜悦。
They believe the more suffering they go through, the Lord will be more pleased with them.
他们也许不吃饭、不睡觉，
Maybe they don't sleep, they don't eat,
甚至他们把石头放到自己的鞋子里面。
or even putting rocks in their shoes.
他们觉得只要自己走路的时候、受苦的时候，就觉得好像在走十字架的道路。
As they're walking on the rock, they're suffering, and that in turn means they're walking the path of cross.
但是耶稣这边讲得很清楚，
But here Jesus clearly states,
我们死的原因是要结出更多的果实。
and that is in order for us to, we die in order for us to obtain more seeds.
那真正死，我们要怎么活出来呢？
那
什么意思呢？
What does it really mean to die and to have life?
就是当神的旨意在我们身上与我们天然的个性有相抵触的时候，
And that is when God's will and our own will is conflicting.
我愿意让，我愿意降服，
We are willing to surrender, we are willing to take a step back.
这个就是死。
And that in itself means death, dying.
自己原来的天性也许好面子，
Maybe you are a very prideful person.
那就要谦卑。
You have to learn to be humble.
你原来是一个内向的个性，
You might be a very introverted person.
现在就要勇敢。
You have to be courageous.
如果你原来是一好讲话的人，
Or someone you are very outspoken,
现在就要学习聆听。
you have to learn to listen.
如果事事都想处理得好，因此心中在做事的时候感到非常的紧张，想要掌控的时候，
Or if you're someone who wants or who is perfectionist and feels very anxious, wanting to make sure everything is perfect, you have to take a step back to learn to relax.
你就要学习交托。
You have to learn to give up.
一个易动怒生气的人就要学习饶恕。
Or someone who is easily angered, you have to learn to forgive.
一个安静的人现在要學習熱情，
And someone who is very quiet, you have to learn to be enthusiastic.
一個喜歡掌控的人，他現在學習要順服。
If you're someone who is very controlling, you have to learn to let go.
這一些種種都在表達一個特質，
All of these are trying to represent a characteristic.
就是當我們面對神的旨意的時候，我們必須要降服，
And that is when we are facing God's will, we have to learn to surrender
不再順着自己的本性而行。
and not to follow our own will, our own thoughts.
而這邊說，一粒麥子若不落在地裡死了，
Here in chapter 24, it says, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground.
也就是說，這一種死法是落在地裡。
And that means this type of death is actually falling to the ground.
什麼叫落在地裡死了？
What does it mean to fall into the ground and die?
就是說我 不能离开人群，我要进入人群里面。
And that is, I am not to be away from the crowd. I have to go into the crowd.
如果受苦乃是我脱离人群，我自我修行的话，
If this type of suffering is escaping from the crowd and just meditating on our own,
我们并没有落在人群里面，我们并没有把自己埋在土里。
and that means we did not put ourselves into the crowd, and we did not bury ourselves into the soil.
但是这种过程容不容易啊？
But is it easy to go through this process?
当你愿意放下自己，并且落在人群当中，你要去爱别人的时候，容不容易啊？
Is it easy to immerse yourself into the ground and learn to love others?
因为你去爱别人的时候，
Because when you learn to love others,
你的意图很可能会被扭曲
your attitude, your intention might be twisted by others,
可能人家会误解你，
and others might misunderstand you.
你的努力可能没有回馈，
You might not obtain any results,
你的投资与回应是不对等。
and you might not get the return that you invested in.
当我们埋在土里的时候，
When we are buried in the soil
就开
underground,
始做一些我们可能人家看不见的服饰，是隐藏的。
we might do services that others are not watching, that are
但
underground.
是当我们付出劳苦不被人家看到、不被称赞的时候，很不是滋味啊。
You might feel very unease when others don't recognize the service that you're doing.
但是耶稣说，当我们要去想到要被人家认知、认可的时候，
However, the moment we have this thought of wanting to be recognized by others of the things that we do,
我们的目的还是希望能够得到别人的赞扬。
then our purpose is still to obtain praises from other people.
我得荣耀的来源还是希望能够得到其他人的认可。
The channel of our glory is still coming from outside, from other people's
那
praises.
我们这一个麦子并没有落在地里，
Then this kernel did not really fall to the ground.
而是我们试着把自己保护得好好的，我们仍然在这个枝子之上，让人看到。
We're still trying to protect ourselves above ground so that others can really see where we are.
耶稣说，当我们想把这个麦子保护得好好的时候，
Jesus says when we're trying to protect the seed, preventing it from falling,
那我们的眼光只有在这个地上。
then our viewpoint, our attitude is only on this world.
无论你把你自己的声望经营的有多好多高，
Doesn't matter how well you build yourself up,
或者你在这个社会上力争上游的成就有多么的了不起，
or doesn't matter how well you're doing in life, in your work, and etc.
耶稣说一句非常残酷的话：
Jesus says this very cruel phrase,
你的生命价值还是仍旧是一粒麦子。
and that is, you still remains as an only single seed.
甚至不能成为别人的粮食。
You might not even become food for others.
你好看，却没有实质的价值。
Even though you are very good to look at, you are useless.
而耶稣说，我们要落在土里。
But Jesus says we must fall into the ground.
耶稣说，真正有价值的侍奉是隐藏的，
Jesus says the most important type of service is hidden,
并且要有耐心跟信心，知道这个种子到地里面的时候会产生变化。
and have the faith and perseverance to know that this seed will produce fruit.
这一个生命会一点一滴的化作别人的养分。
And this seed will become oxygen for others one day at a time.
耶稣讲这句话是对他门徒讲，
Jesus said these words to his disciples.
也是对我们这一群今天在跟随主耶稣的人讲，
It is also spoken to us who are following him today.
也就是对教会讲。
And that is to the church.
在教会里面，我们有不同的职位，有不同的头衔，
In the church, we have different titles, we have different services.
有所谓的牧师、长老、执事。
There's deacon, there's pastors, and elders.
这一些头衔如果没有经历死，
If these different titles did not go through death,
是没有真正任何实质的价值的，
there is no true value.
那是空的，那是虚的，那是假的。
It is false, it is all empty.
一个教会里面，如果他的讲台
If in a church, the pulpit,
如果是一个舞台的话
if it is a stage,
它只是一个镁光灯的焦点，
and this is just a place for spotlight,
它彰显的是在上面讲话的、唱歌跳舞的那一个人。
it is only putting the spotlight on the person who is speaking, who's dancing up there.
它没有供应任何的生命。
It did not produce any life.
在神的家中，职分不是头衔，
In God's house,
it's not the title，
it is not the title that
它不是一个官位，它不是一个身份，
it is not the title that you have that's good.
它不是一个值得骄傲的东西，
It is not something you should be prideful about.
而是一个使命的承担，
It is actually obtaining the will.
承担造就生命的一个托付。
It is obtaining the mission of building others up.
而教会也不是一个高尚娱乐的一个俱乐部，
And church is not a place of socializing.
而是一个充满爱和牺牲、愿意滋养和传递生命的一个家。
It is actually a house that is willing to provide love and also sacrificing for others.
世界上面都在教导我们要奋斗、追求荣耀。
In this world, it's actually teaching us to fight forward to obtain the glory for yourself.
耶稣跟我们说要小心，
But Jesus says, watch out,
因为到最后只会成为一个捧在高高在上的一粒麦子，那是白活了。
Jesus, at the end, if you would live like that, you'll only be single seed that is up high. You live in vain.
而耶稣在举这个例子的时候，我们也要注意一点，
And when Jesus gives this example, we have to watch one thing.
因为他在讲一粒麦子若不落在地里死了，是指种子。
Like Jesus said, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground, it mentioned about this one single seed.
后来长出的许多果实是怎么样的呢？
What is it? How does the many seed that produces later on?
也就是说，与这个掉下来的这个麦子有同样的生命啊。
And that is, they have the same life as the single seed that fell onto the ground.
有同样的基因啊，
They have the same DNA.
所以耶稣说，这掉下来不单单让这个麦子成为他人的养分，
The single seed drop onto the ground did not only become the oxygen for others,
nutrition，
nutrition,
也传递了一个生命的特质，结出许许多多跟这个原来种子一样的生命。
it produces many seeds that have the same characteristics as the original seed.
也就是耶稣正在告诉他的门徒，
And that is exactly what Jesus is trying to tell the disciples.
我现在马上就要钉十字架，
And that is, I am about to go onto the cross.
我为你们埋在地里。
I will be buried on the ground for you.
我现在不要求世界上的荣耀，但是我花时间在你们身上。
I am not looking for the glory of the world. I am spending time with you.
当我死了复活以后，
Once I die and resurrect,
我的生命在你们身上，
my life, it will be in you.
而你们要怎么活呢？
How should you live?
你们活得跟我一样。
You must live the same way as me.
你现在就落在地里死，
You, in the same way, fall onto the ground and die.
在我给你的那个生命力上面，你也会结出许多的子粒来。
With the same life that I given to you, you will produce many fruit the same way.
我的死不是白死，
My death is not dying in vain.
你的死也不是白死。
In the same way, you dying will not be in vain either.
这一种死是带有永恒意义的，
This death has eternal meaning.
而且能够带出许多的生命，永恒的生命。
It will produce many eternal lives.
但是有一种死是自以为在追求生命美好的事物。
There's a type of death that is you're in your own mind as if you were producing and doing great things.
但是实际上却没有目标，没有意义，没有价值。
Yet it has no value, it has no purpose.
那这一种的人他认为他正在活，而且活得非常的精彩。
And this type of group of people think that they are living and they're living very abundantly.
但是耶稣说，这群人白活了。
But Jesus says they have lived in vain.
马太福音第8章22节，
Book of Matthew, chapter
8
8,
verse 22。
22.
耶稣说，任凭死人去埋葬他们的死人。
Jesus says, let the dead bury their own dead.
就是从耶稣的眼光，这一群认为他们是活的人，实际上他们是死的，让他们去忙吧。
And actually, because in Jesus' perspective, these group of people, they're already dead. Let them be busybodies themselves.
而耶稣希望能够呼召门徒说，但是你来跟随我吧。
But Jesus wants the disciples to understand, you come and follow me.
耶稣在跟这一群人说，
Jesus says to this group of people,
自以为要为生活去奋斗、去争取名望的人，
those who are trying to obtain a name for themselves,
那一群人是死人。
they are dead already.
耶稣也在跟我说，
Jesus is also telling me the same way.
如果我想在这世上再去争取一些所谓的名望跟利益，
If I want to obtain a name for myself in this world,
耶稣不停地跟我说，我是死人啊。
Jesus continuously reminding me that I will be a dead man.
但是反过来，
But on the contrary,
从世人的眼光，我们基督徒在追随主耶稣基督。
in the same way, contrary, from the people of this world's view, we are following Jesus.
礼拜天大好时间还来做礼拜，
Sunday, a wonderful day, but we come and worship Him.
时间宝贵啊！没有你为什么花时间在没有前途的东西上面？
Time is so precious. Why are you wasting your time on something that you would not obtain anything else
但
on?
是耶稣告诉我们说，那才是真正的人生，那个才是真正的活。
But Jesus tells us that is actually the life, and that is the way to live.
我今天为什么要选这一段经文？
Why did I choose this passage today?
因为我想到我们当中亲爱的姊妹伊丽莎，
Because it has reminded me of our dear sister Lisa.
因为我们从她身上看见耶稣的生命特质。
Because we see Jesus' characteristics in her life.
现在大家进门没有看见伊丽莎在前面欢迎我们了，
You no longer see Lisa greeting us at the front door.
在厨房也没看见她的服饰了，
You don't see her in the kitchen serving you.
在主日学小朋友那边她也不是老师了，
She's no longer a teacher in children's Sunday school.
那她就走了，她便没有了吗？
Did she just essentially evaporate?
哎，不是的，我们发现，
No, of course not.
我们发现她有一些布置的这些风格还在我们当中。
We still have the way that she decorates in our church.
她在我们当中的时候，
When she was with us,
她总是忠心不懈的在那边服侍儿童们，让所有的父母们能够好好的来上主日学，来做礼拜。
she served faithfully in the children's Sunday school so that the parents can come and worship in the sanctuary.
她把她自己埋在一个不显眼的地方，
She'd hid herself in a spot where it's not very easily known.
当我们还在忙碌不同的事情的时候，
When we are busy with things in our life,
她经常打电话去关心并且探访不同的人，
she often calls or pay visitations to brothers and sisters.
好像我们表面上看不见她所付出的。
Maybe on the surface, we don't see the things that she actually does.
在暑假的时候，她带着自己的孩子去短宣，
In the summertime, she'd take her children to short-term mission,
并且到不同的营地去做这些有特殊需要孩子们的这些服饰。
and she does special services to special children in need.
当礼拜天在聚会的时候，
During Sunday service,
他总是早我们1个小时来到教会。
she often comes to church an hour early before we start.
有谁看到了吗？
Anybody see that?
因为他早来，所以我也搞不清楚他到底早来多久。
And because she came earlier before I do, so I actually don't know what time she actually arrives.
只有她那个很可怜的丈夫总是跟着她开车过来。
Only her husband knows who unfortunately has to go with her that early to drive her here.
我那时候就想，我觉得我时间很宝贵，难道她时间不宝贵吗？
I often think, well, I think my time is very precious. Does her time not precious?
这个并不代表说伊丽莎说把所有的东西都埋在这边，她也是懂得享受人生的人。
I'm not saying that she hides all her time in here. She actually knows how to enjoy life.
她也是懂得追求美丽的人。
She actually enjoys to pursue beauty.
但是当她知道神的旨意跟她的这些追求有相抵触的时候，
But she understands when God's will and her own pursuit is conflicting and contradicting each other.
她就默默地把自己埋在这样的一个侍奉里面，
She quietly hides herself in this type of service
让她自己能够成为别人的祝福和别人的养分。
so that she can be a nutrient and she can be a blessing to others.
在过去半年当中，
In the past half year or so,
我们好像眼睁睁地看她怎么样死。
from our perspective, we kind of witness and see how she slowly dies.
但是实际上，她正在教我们怎么活。
But actually, she is trying to teach us how to live.
我们好像失去了她，
Maybe it seems like we have lost her,
实际上我们是得到了。
but actually, we have gained her.
她在最后的2个礼拜生命里面，
In the last 2 weeks of her life,
她的清醒的时间不多，
she did not have too many waking moments.
而她的儿女告诉我，
Her children told me
在最后的2个主日礼拜，
in the last 2 Sundays,
她也是硬要让自己或者奇迹式的能够清醒，能够做礼拜。
she forces herself, or miraculously, she woke herself up to join Sunday worship.
哇，只有她自己也知道生命时间不多了，
She herself knows and understands that she does not have much time left.
她的时间珍贵不珍贵啊？
Isn't her time precious?
但是她却认为敬拜主就是把她生命花在最好的地方。
But to her, worshiping the Lord, it already itself is putting the best time on.
因着疫情的缘故，
Because of COVID,
伊丽莎没办法满足她最后到耶路撒冷去旅游的心愿。
she was not able to go to Israel, one of her places that she wanted to go.
虽然这是她与魏的一个遗憾，
Although it is something that they regret, or Uncle Wei and Auntie Lisa regret.
但是我们却看见她在最后的我们所谓居家令的时段当中，她埋在教会里面。
Yet, as we had curfews, she buried herself in church.
而我们多么蒙福，每个礼拜可以跟她在祷告会上面能够见面。
How blessed are we to be able to see her on prayer meetings every week?
也许所谓的正常人说，那我呢？我的时间呢？我的时间宝贵啊，我要做这个做那个。
Maybe for us, normally we might say, oh, my time is so precious, I need to do this, I need to do that.
但是他把他的生命埋在主爱之家里面，
But she buried her life into House of Christ Love,
让我们有机会去跟他学习。
so that we have an opportunity to learn from her.
伊丽莎也是懂得跨越文化背景隔阂的人，
Elisa is someone who knows to go above cultural barriers.
不论你结婚没有，
Whether you are married or
有
not,
没有工作，
whether you have a job or not,
什么语言，什么年纪，
doesn't matter what language you spoke or how old you are.
他都关心你。
She'll take time to take care for you.
他用他有限的语言去传递耶稣无限的爱。
She uses her limited language to share the limitless love of God.
我要是想，我如果要用广东话去或跟台语去跟人家沟通，
To me, if I were to speak to someone in Taiwanese or in Cantonese,
丢脸了，笑死了，被人家笑死。
other people will laugh at me.
我要保护自己，
I have to protect myself.
讲英文我也少讲一点，中文也不太行，我最好少讲话一点，
Oh, I should just speak a little less on English and also Chinese
因为
too,
我怕丢脸。
because I'm afraid to lose face.
我发现Elisa 活她不怕。
But actually, from Elisa, she was not afraid whatsoever.
那国语也讲，英文也讲，
She spoke in Chinese, Mandarin. She spoke in English
因为她的目的是要去造就别人。
because her purpose is to edify others.
所以我们看到 Elisa 的生命的时候，
So therefore, when we see Elisa's life,
我们看到她死，
we see that she has died.
但是这个死不过是肉体的死。
But this death is just merely physical body.
然而我们也看见她在活的时候，她的那个死也有在跟我们释放。
Yet when she was living, the way that she was dying for herself, it was producing seed and fruit in us.
她放下自己的权益和骄傲，
She let go of her pride and the things that she has.
所以她也死给我们看。
She has died, showing us
在教会当中诸多的事工当中，
in different ministries in the church.
哇，她一下不在了。
All of a sudden, she's not here.
我们在想，哇，那谁打电话探访啊？
We might think, oh, who is going to call others?
谁去送这个主餐时候要的这些饼杯啊？
Who is going to send out the Holy Communion elements?
谁去做接送的工作啊？
Who is going to pick up and drop off
谁来
brothers and
布
sisters?
置教会啊？
Who is going to decorate a church?
谁来祷告会啊？
Who is coming to prayer meeting?
一时我们觉得哇，少了一个重要的人物啊。
All of a sudden, we see we are missing someone so vital.
但是耶稣跟我们讲一件事情，
However, Jesus tells us this one thing.
这个生命会埋进去之后，会结出许多子粒来。
Jesus tells us this life that is buried underground will produce many abundant fruit.
哇，耶稣对我们真好，把以利撒放在我们当中，
Yes, Jesus is so good. He has placed Elisa amongst us.
他死在我们当中。
She has died in us.
请问我们有没有结出许多的果实来？
Did we produce many fruit, many seeds?
有啊，
Yes, of course.
在他的追思礼拜当中，
In her memorial service,
我很喜欢一位广东的姊妹，她说她爱心爆炸。
I really enjoyed a Cantonese sister who said her love explodes.
果然，她的爱心是在地里面爆炸啊，地雷啊！
Of course, she's like a bomb that exploded.
她这个生命力在我们教会里面50个人当中活化出来。
Her life and her love has been lived out in House of Christ Love in the 50.
会长大的。
It will grow.
所以现在虽然一个爱心爆炸的人回天家了，
Even though this love bomb has returned to heavenly home,
他现在留下50颗爱心炸弹。
she has left behind 50 love bombs.
我在这边也鼓励所有弟兄姊妹。
I'm here to encourage brothers and sisters as well.
我才问过魏，
I
以
just
利
asked,
撒是他们家第一个信主。
Wei, Elisa's actually the first believer in her household.
也许在我们当中有些人你是家中第一个信主，
To many of us here, you might be the first believer in your household.
不要怕，
Don't be afraid,
因为耶稣落在地里死了，
because Jesus has fallen to the ground and died.
结出许多子粒，那个子粒就是你。
He has produced many fruit, many seed, and you.
那个生命力就在你身上。
And that life is also in you.
你也可以埋在地里，你也可以为你们家庭带来福音的第一个种子。
You may fall into the ground and produce and be the first seed in your household.
我们从以利撒的生命当中，我们就见证到，也经历到。
Because of Lisa's life, we have seen, we have witnessed that.
保罗在哥林多后书第4章11节到13节这里说，
Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 says this.
他说：“因为我们这活着的人，常是为耶稣被交于死地。”
He says, "For while we live, we are always been given up to death for Jesus' sake."
使耶稣的生在我们这必死的身上显明出来。
So that the life of Jesus may be made visible in our mortal flesh.
这样看来，死在我们身上发动，生却在你们身上发动。
So death is at work in us, but life in you.
因为我们在这边得到耶稣这样的一个生命力，
Here we have obtained this life from Jesus.
而我们今天愿意落在地里。
And today we are willing to fall to the ground and die.
耶稣真是恩待我们。
Jesus is so gracious to us.
在我们生命当中，我相信在各位的生命当中，有不少耶稣的门徒在你的周围死了。
I believe many of you have Jesus' disciples who have fallen and died in the ground.
为的是在你身上有基督活的生命力。
So that there is Jesus' living life in you.
让我们以诗歌来思想今天的信息。
Let us use a hymn to ponder on the message today.